Honorable members, I welcome all members who have logged in to the virtual mini-plenary session. There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Thank you. Honorable members, before we proceed, I would like to remind you that the virtual mini-plenary is deemed to be in the precinct of Parliament and constitute a meeting of the National Assembly for debating purposes only. In addition to the rules of virtual sittings, the rules of the National Assembly, including the rules of debate, apply. Members enjoy the same powers and privileges that apply in a sitting of the National Assembly. Members should equally note that anything said in the virtual platform is deemed to have been said to the House and may be ruled upon. All members who have logged in shall be considered to be present and are requested to mute their microphones and only unmute when recognized to speak. This is because the mics are very sensitive and will pick up noise which might disturb the attention of other members. When recognized to speak, please unmute your microphone and connect your video. Members may make use of icons on the bar at the bottom of their screens, which has an option that allows a member to put up his or her hand to raise points of order. The Secretariat will assist in alerting the chairperson to members requesting to speak. When using the virtual system, members are urged to refrain or desist from unnecessarily point of orders or interjections. Lastly, I wish to remind you that we are meeting in a mini-plenary session, and therefore, any decisions will be taken in full plenary session of the Assembly. The first item on the order paper is a subject for discussion in the name of Honorable W M Madisha on the public sector wage bill and the need to develop a comprehensive public sector remuneration strategy for the medium to long term to include holders of public office, officials in state-owned companies, public entities, and local government. I now recognize the Honorable W M Madisha from the virtual platform. Can you please unmute Honorable Madisha? IT, Honorable Madisha is still muted. Can you please attend to that?
Honorable Chairperson.
Yes, go ahead, Honorable Madisha.
Thank you very much, and all the honorable members. Permit me to believe that we all know who public service workers are. Further, permit me to emphasize that those who are extremely important, people who work in the government institutions to implement laws and services expectations that this parliament directs government to take forward. Those people are health workers who sacrifice their lives to ensure that all South Africans live their full lives and healthy lives from birth till death. They are educators whose work is to ensure that all South African people acquire skills and rather for purposes of national economic development. These are people who are administrators in all government departments and of course at all levels. They also fight crime, which includes killings, corruption, state capture, and actual theft. They also run SOEs and many other areas that I may not have cited. there are those people who are there in our institutions, and I must emphasize that they are more than 1 million. It is on the basis of this that their importance, that the state, their employer, is compelled to sit with them on course, rather of course, represented by their unions, as is the case in South Africa today, and develop comprehensive public sector strategies, which include comprehensive remuneration strategy for medium to a long-term period. I must indicate that although the state has done that before and agreements were reached, implementation has seldom taken place properly. This is proven by the 2020 MTBS, where government celebrates victory for having succeeded to not implement the remuneration agreement and announces the declaration of war in future negotiation. Already government calls on Parliament to agree that public service wages must be put at 1.8% and go down to 0.8% in 2021 MTEF and even lower beyond 2021. This is without doubt extremely wrong. What government does, and this has become a consistent practice, is to sit down with workers, come up with agreements which government never implements. What must be done? We call on government really to sit with the workers and develop a 3 years agreement which must be implemented. They need to ensure that there are skills developed. What has been happening, although this has been the case for over more than 10 years, what government has not done has been to implement those particular levels of agreements, and this is a major problem. And what Parliament needs to do is to say to government that once the agreement or agreements have gone into after very, very lengthy discussions, there must be implementation, which I want to emphasize has not taken place for a very, very long time. What government does is to go into agreement, 3-year agreement, instead of implementing, they don't. For instance, again, they will go at least a year before the implementation and talk for the whole year, but then when the actual implementation has got to be done, the opposite is the case. Now, that's the first major problem that we are faced with. The next one is the problem that we are faced with of local government structures. Out of hundreds in the country, hundreds of municipalities, less than 10 got a clean audit. Now, what are the problems that we are faced with? COGTA, we want to say, has not done its work and is continuing not to do its work, because in all instances, what we are faced with is that many municipalities, many local government structures don't know what they are supposed to do. Hence, we are saying that even for those people to get lots and lots of money, this is not supposed to be the case. I listened, for example, to the president as he was speaking yesterday, where he said that municipalities have got a chance to manufacture their own power by the year 2021. And I want to say that this is impossible, because a lot of money will go to these particular structures and nothing will happen altogether because of the incapacity that permeates those particular municipalities. Now, a lot of money gets stolen. Even the money that is supposed to pay ordinary workers is taken by those office bearers at those particular levels. And I therefore would urge Parliament to look into this, the honorary members, and say that this is impossible, this is wrong. Now, when you go to the SOEs, not all SOEs out of 700 are still important. Some share mandates, some share responsibilities. Despite their uselessness, they receive billions of rands, which should be directed to actual public service delivery and remuneration of the important services to the people of South Africa. Therefore, close those which are no longer necessary and merge those which share mandates and responsibilities. I can give an example of the Department of Communication. You remember that there were two departments, but then they've been brought together. We have only one department. We have been able to save money from either side, and we are able now to go forward properly. Now, this is something that is not happening when you look at the SOEs. Lots and lots of monies are just thrown around, and we are not getting anywhere altogether. Now, a major problem there has really come up even more, because billions that go to them must be directed to the primary public service workers to ensure that there is a delivery. Now, I want to emphasize, Chair, that the monies that go to all these areas have got to go to the payment of workers in the public service. I want to say that all the figures that we have that have been given by the Department of Finances and so on in the past week, all that has got to be looked into, and enough has to be given to the working people of our country who are there to deliver and do their best in the public service, instead of simply kicking people out and ensuring that they go nowhere. I can give an example with SABC, which of course is part of the SOEs that we're talking about. Workers are just kicked out, nothing is happening, they are not given anything, there are no skills, there is no money for a future development, nothing altogether. And these are things that have got to stop. I want to emphasize further, honorable members and chairperson, that agreements are reached between unions and the employer, which is the state in this instance. But then those agreements are never implemented. And we cannot agree that we rise against the ordinary employers out there which are not the state. And we see those employers as wrong employers. And yet, here we are, a state which falls under the democratic government. But then we say everything is correct because it is this state, it is this government that can go on and just throw anything and not look after the people of South Africa. I therefore want to say to Parliament, let's look into this and agree that this kind of firing of people, this kind of non-implementation of the agreements which are there has got to come to an end, so that all these particular figures that have been given to you and all the figures that are going to be given to you in the coming few weeks have got to be looked into, and we've got to make sure that there is proper implementation. Thank you for now, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Madisha. My apologies, I was muted for a second there. The next speaker will be Honorable T.H. James from the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. Can you hear me now? Honorable Chairperson, can you hear me now? Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable James, indeed I can hear you, but I'm muted to respond to you. Can IT assist us in not muting us as and when we are dealing with the proceedings? Because I can't chair a session where when I must preside, I'm muted. My apologies with that. IT, please attend to that. Honorable James? You see, now you are muted, Honorable James. Honorable James, can you unmute yourself? IT, can you assist Honorable James to unmute himself?
Yes, I'm unmuted now.
Yes, proceed. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The ANC welcomes the opportunity to debate what we define as a matter of principle. When we talk of a matter of principle, we refer to how you build social compacts, of how you build human solidarity, of how you display the highest political and ethical morality in dealing with the challenges we face, and how we take a principled approach in dealing with these challenges. Whatever the intentions of the sponsor of this subject of discussion are, we as the ANC are interested in finding solutions, knowing that there are always alternatives and that a single narrative is never a solution to any economic challenge. In this context, one of the principles that the ANC advances is that of honoring agreements in financially challenging times, which requires creative thinking and proposals. It requires lateral thinking, not mechanical thinking. A second principle that the ANC advances is that of an injury to one is an injury to all. That one section cannot assume responsibility for the entire part when the entire part requires attention. In other words, we have to be holistic when we deal with challenges. A third principle that the ANC advances is that there is no morality in opting for a solution where the poorest will pay. Human solidarity means that there will always be cross-subsidization by those who can afford of those who cannot afford. So, in the context of the Public Service Bargaining Council and its agreements, you protect the lowest grades, those outside of senior management services, those who can least afford and are classified as the poverty of the employed. What we mean are those who work to hand over their monthly wage to debt and continue from one month to the next in perpetual poverty. A fourth principle that the ANC advances is that courts of laws are not the solution in resolving collective bargaining dispute. Running to the courts is a sign of failure, not of strength. Strength lies in convincing the one you seek to convince that their argument has serious flaws, and then being able to convince your opponent to see the alternative way. A fifth principle that the ANC advances is that of an ongoing commitment to human resource development. The public service provides a wonderful example of training and development, and the ANC in its policy document from 1992, entitled Ready to Govern, spelled out the ANC's commitment to overall human resource development of the country, the country's greatest natural endowment. Therefore, Our public service must be a reflection of this, not a battlefield for economic choices. Let us all acknowledge the role of public service workers. Since 1994, it is they who implemented the spirit and the intention of the Reconstruction and Development Program of the ANC and its alliance partners. It is they who implemented the white paper on reconstruction and development and transformation of the public service. It is they, on behalf of the state, that contributed to development of the country. It is they who rallied behind the call of Batupili in 1996 and responded. The development and remuneration of public service workers for implementation of economic reconstruction and recovery plan is critical. Economic plan depends on a public service and administrative support to the sector recovery plans in all of their 3 phases. Without this support, the plan will not achieve its intended results. So there is a dialectical relationship between economic success of our country and administrative support in the public service and public sector. Some of the ANC's primary policy projects, like the National Health Insurance, will provide for a healthier nation that will better contribute to the success of the economic recovery and reconstruction plan. Our greatest tribute to the public service workers must be their heroic role that they have played since the onset of the COVID-19 in March. It is they who have faced the ultimate danger. Many contracted illnesses, and there are those who have paid the ultimate price of giving their lives so that others could live. We need to honor them and pay tribute to them in a manner that recognizes their bravery and commitment. Let us now deal with the myth that underpin this debate. The first myth is that public service wage bill debt is climbing, whilst in the private sector it is declining. That dropping private sector remuneration and rising public sector remuneration is unsustainable. So, what do the facts and evidence and research tell us? Research conducted covering the last 10 years show that the difference between private sector increases and public service increases is less than 1%. In fact, we need to state and caution those in government from using private sector research whose impartiality is heavily influenced by a capitalist accumulation path. It is best to use state research institutions that we in Parliament, through budget votes, agree to. The comparison that private sector research used as sampling revealed that nurse for nurse and teacher for teacher did not inform the research, but rather the research took petrol assistants and retail sector workers to provide evidence of dropping remunerations in private sector, and to then manufacture the narrative that remuneration in public service is disproportionate and unsustainable. The second myth is that the public sector is bloated. This is, of course, losing credibility now, but it still gets manufactured and repeated as a fact. International research shows that compared to other developing countries, we are in fact understaffed. Research from the National School of Government confirms this. In fact, the vacancy rate in the public service stands at 170,000. The 2018 Presidential Health Summit found a shortfall of 37,000 posts in the health sector. Another myth that is peddled is the conscious conflating of the cost of public sector workers with public service workers and used as a reason to constrain the public service wage bill. The public sector accounts for 73.4% of the total employment in the public sector, excluding state-owned enterprises. And therefore, the total cost to the state is often used as a total cost of public service needs to put but in perspective. To put in perspective, another perspective, public service employment increased by just over 123,000 people, or 9.7% in 1994 and between 1994 and 2019. This increase of public service employment has not kept up with 46.7% increase in the population growth to 59.6 million in 2020 from 40.6 million in 1994, and hence the chronic understaffing in certain occupational groups. In conclusion, Honorable Chairperson, the ANC approached this debate informed by philosophical and policy positions, and one of demonstrating alternatives to finding a solution as opposed to a single narrative. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable James. I will now call upon Honorable L.A. Schreiber from the Democratic Alliance. Honorable Schreiber. Honorable Schreiber. Is Honorable Schreiber in the house? Okay, I will pass and go to the EFF, Honorable R.N. Komane. Honorable Komane. IT, can you check if they are not muted? Is there anyone from the EFF who can advise? I can see Honorable Thengiwe Mkhalip indicating that they are muted. Can IT attend to that?
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Komane, just a minute.
Thank you, Chair.
Honorable Komane, my apologies. Let me go back to the DA because I can see they are also indicating that they have a problem. I can see Honorable Schreiber struggling to come in. IT, can you unmute Honorable Schreiber? IT. Honorable Schreiber, my apologies. Let me proceed to Honorable Komane. I will come back to you. My sincere apologies. Honorable Komane.
Thank you very much, Chair. Can you please deal with this issue of the host muting us? By the way, it's fine. Thank you very much, Chair. Going back to the debate, let us take this opportunity to demystify some of the misconceptions around the issue of public sector wage bill. There is an impression that is given largely by the National Treasury as part of the agenda to continue with austerity policies that we spend too much money on personnel, and we have too many people in government who are not adding value to save to the service delivery. To take this at face value and not interrogate systematic issues will only lead to dealing with the superficial number without substance and evidence, when a structural issue that needs our attention and needs to be resolved urgently is the nature of the state. Number one, Chair, there are services that the state must provide which should never be entrusted to the private sector. This includes the education of our children. It includes the safety of our people, healthcare provision. At the moment, these are human beings that need to be physically present to do their work. You cannot wish them away by austerity or austerity policies. Already, a majority of them are poorly paid, highly indebted, and some cannot even afford to put a roof over their heads and send their children to school. Over the past years, Chair, the reality is that the salaries of teachers, doctors, nurses, our policewomen and men, and soldiers, and even municipal workers have not increased in line with the inflation, and they live one paycheck away from poverty. So we must not be misled by some of the statements that do not see government employees as human beings, but simply numbers where you can just wake up one morning and decide to freeze their salary and not fill the position which are critical for service delivery. The result that workers are there end up doing work for two and sometimes more than two people. According to the Statistics South Africa, it is estimated that the population increased by 21% between 2006 and this year, and the total headcount of government employees only increased by 16%. This means that the ratio of public servants to population fell overall. Second biggest issue, Chair, with the public servant wage bill is that we employ 1.3 million public servants who in the majority are doing an administrative work of managing contracts of tenders. That is, if you remove those that are teachers, nurses, doctors, police, and soldiers. They manage contracts between the state and private companies because the government cannot deliver even the most basic services. They rely on tenders for everything. Essentially, Chair, what we have here is two states in one. One of the public servants who are mainly administrators, and two of the public companies who are in themselves an arm of the state because they deliver the majority of the service on behalf of the state. If we were spending more than 600 billion a year that we spent on salaries paying for workers who go to work to clean the streets, to build the roads, to collect the refuse, to build the houses, to maintain the electricity infrastructure, to provide social services, to clean our parks, to manage our dump sites and recycling activities, to plant our cities, develop new economic activities, to build sporting facilities. If we do all this, we will get the value for the 600 billion and we will not have to spend an equal amount on tenders and contracts. As a result, Chair, we will not be complaining that we spend too much money on public servant salaries. Lastly, Chairperson, we must condemn the attitude that the National Treasury and the Finance Minister to undermine the negotiation that was agreed on by the union and the state on annual increases. To now want to backtrack on the agreement in its totality undermines the relationship between the state and the workers, and that is allowed us to agree in many negotiations in the past. It is unacceptable, Chair, and this must highly be condemned. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Komane. We'll now go back to Honorable Schreiber. Honorable Schreiber. Honorable members, I have made a request to IT that they sort out this issue. I do not know what is happening, and there's little that I can do. My apologies in that regard. Honorable Schreiber, I will ask that you bear with me and proceed to Honorable Ngwezi while they sort out the IT issue, so that we don't disrupt the proceedings of the plenary. I hope that is welcome. Honorable Ngwezi of the IFP. Honorable members, can I request that we break for 5 minutes so that I deal with the issue of IT? Thank you very much. Honorable members, it seems that our problem has been resolved. I will now go back to Honorable Schreiber of the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Chair. I hope you can hear me now.
Yes,
Honorable,
I can.
For more than a decade, the Democratic Alliance has warned that the day would come when unsustainable populist wage increases would threaten the fiscal survival of our republic. That day is today. Today, this government spends over 30 billion rand per year on the salaries of 29,000 millionaire managers, many of whom are political cadres who lack even the most basic skills. But just this past week, we heard that the state has no money left to build houses for the most vulnerable members of society. Out of every 1 rand collected in taxes, 51 cents are now used just to pay salaries. We spend a quarter more on salaries than the rest of the world. But figures alone don't tell the full story. This is not merely an accounting problem. It is not even really a technical problem. At its heart, the problem with our public sector is political and ideological. At the most basic conceptual level, the ANC's decades-long abuse of the public sector is rooted in its desire for total control. This lust for power over society was best articulated by the intellectual architect of ANC state capture, Joel Netsetshenzhe, when he wrote in 1998 that the party's aim is to extend its control over all levers of power: the army, the police, the bureaucracy, intelligence structures, the judiciary, parastatals, and agencies such as regulatory bodies, the public broadcaster, the central bank, and so on. Today, as we face the greatest economic depression in a generation, it is clear that the ANC has succeeded in its quest to capture and corrupt the state. And the results have been devastating for our society. Aside from where the DA governs, and with a few important other exceptions that only serve to prove the rule, our civil service now exists only to further the interests of a single political party, rather than serving the people of South Africa. We have ANC cadres deployed into managerial positions in the Department of Human Settlements, where they are paid millions of rands each year. But what exactly are they managing now that their salaries have consumed the money meant to build houses? The executives of SAA and PRASA continue to be paid outrageous multi-million rand salaries, even though there are no longer planes in the sky or trains on the tracks. The ideology of total control has reduced us to a sad Potemkin state that exists in name only. At first glance, our state has some of the trappings of a modern public service, complete with the associated jargon and titles. But look just beyond the flimsy facade, and you will see a state that is not even able to do the most basic things. Tax money is stolen with breathtaking ease. Systems are seemingly always offline. Private businesses suffer because the state cannot pay suppliers on time. Yet even as the economy imploded and public sector productivity crashed, the ANC kept increasing the salaries of their deployed cadres and their political friends in the labor unions. And now that the chickens have come home to roost, it is politically impossible for this government to rein in the public wage bill in a responsible manner. Cadre deployment has been so devastatingly successful that nearly all of the most powerful and well-paid positions in the state are now occupied by ANC members and their cronies from COSATU, the very people who have, in the past, toppled ANC leaders. So instead of going after overpaid but politically powerful cadres in management positions, the government has chosen the cowardly route of across-the-board wage freezes, which will have a disproportionate impact on lower-paid frontline service delivery heroes like nurses and police officers. It is frankly amazing that the previous ANC speaker can sit here and claim that they are on the side of the poor. In fact, it is the ANC's across-the-board wage freeze that is actively busy punishing the lowest-paid workers just to protect millionaire cadres from salary cuts. Yet, even while they are busy punishing frontline workers, the DA can reveal today that this very parliament has wasted nearly $250 million just on business class flight tickets for retired ministers, deputy ministers, and their families. That's right. Every year, millions of taxpayer rands are used to fly the likes of Bongani Bongo, Des van Rooyen, Enoch Godongwana, and Malusi Gigaba around in luxury. They get this benefit for the rest of their lives, even into retirement. This government simply does not exist to serve the people of South Africa. It exists only to serve itself and its powerful cronies. It is willing to sacrifice basic government services just to keep cadres like Gigaba on the gravy train forever. As far back as October 2019, the DA introduced a plan that would have cut the public wage bill by 168 billion and stabilized public finances while still granting inflation-linked increases to the people who actually deliver critical services. But this plan could only be implemented by a government that was brave enough to take on political cadres and unions. Instead, of course, the ANC chose to sacrifice the incomes of nurses and police officers, as well as the 30 million poor people who depend on public services, just to protect the sky-high salaries of cadres in management positions. Honorable Chair, we are in this position today because the government has consistently ignored all of the warnings along the way. And as we now slide ever more rapidly towards outright state failure, this is likely one of the final opportunities the ANC will get to heed our warning. If they took a moment to look out of their business class flight window or stepped out of their luxury German SUV, they would see that South Africa has arrived at the last chance saloon. Time is running out and the choice is clear. Managers or maths teachers, cadres or country, politics or the people. Tick-tock. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Schreiber. We'll now move to Honorable Ngwezi of the IFP. Honorable Ngwezi.
Thank you very much, Honorable House Chairperson. As was noted in the Treasury's response to the public submissions to the medium-term budget policy statement, South Africa's debt service cost us now 4.8% of the GDP. As members of the legislature, this figure must cause alarm. If we as a country continue down this unsustainable path, we may not have a feasible economy of which to speak. This, compounded by COVID-19, means that we have some difficult times ahead of us and even more difficult decisions to make. It is common knowledge that South Africa spends more of its national income on salaries of which it is 1.3 million civil servants. According to the IMF, this is more than is the norm in many similar democracies. For a long time now, National Treasury has been working tirelessly to stem the financial hemorrhage at multiple state-owned enterprises and government departments. A failure to sustainably generate the necessary revenue by SOEs and municipalities is a stark reminder of work we have to do. It is unfortunate, and it was entirely avoidable, that the results of the unabated corruption and other mismanagement, even at local government level, will have a negative impact on the lives of average South Africans. Treasury's wage freeze solution is one born of desperation. The options to stabilize the fiscus have steadily dwindled, leaving us in this precarious position. The truth of the matter is the integrity of members of this House has been called into question due to the unethical and greedy conduct of some who sits among us. Conduct which has contributed to the problem, Honorable Chair. The IFP recognizes the imperative to remunerate office holders in a manner that reflects their qualifications, capability, and contribution. However, when it comes to underperforming SOEs embroiled in never-ending corruption scandals who have a revolving door of leaders, a careful and well-contemplated approach must be taken. We cannot continue to pay millions in salaries to entities that bleed the same funds intended to rescue them. The solution must be a multi-pronged one that addresses top-heavy salaries and lavish bonuses, a solution that addresses the failure to generate revenue by SOEs and municipalities, one that places effective checks and balances between people and the state coffers, and one that places qualified and reliable individuals in the public office. Honorable members, it is time for us to play our part and demand solutions that are innovative and impactful, both now and for the long term. Thank you very much, Chair.
Thank you very much, Honorable Ngwezi. The next speaker will be Honorable Dana of the FF+. Honorable Dana.
Thank you, House Chair. The Honorable Madisha is correct when he says that a comprehensive public sector remuneration strategy is needed. Also correct is the Minister of Finance when he said in his medium-term budget statement that the reduction of the public sector wage bill will save the fiscus 300 billion rand. The public sector wage bill cost us 154 billion rand in 26-27. In 2018-2019, it cost the country 580 billion. This was a 78% inflation adjusted increase and a real increase of 44%. The increase from 26 to 2019 surpassed our rate of economic growth and productivity. Presently, the wage bill is over 600 billion for 1.3 million public servants, a third of the country's entire budget. If this is not dealt with soon, we will face a fiscal debt crisis within the next 3 years or even sooner. Treasury realizes this, and from there, the minister's proposal to freeze public sector wage increases for the next 3 years. But why are we in this situation in the first place? Because the ANC government does not understand the difference between being an employment creator and being an employment provider. The ANC has failed to stimulate job and employment creation in this country. We have a record unemployment rate, and before you blame coronavirus, it was already a record in 2019 before the lockdown. And in the wake of the ANC's failure to create jobs, it used the fiscus to provide jobs. But you cannot continue to provide jobs to a fast-growing labour market with fast-growing salary demands due to overzealous trade unions on the revenue from an even faster shrinking tax base. Subtract that which is stolen through misappropriation, fraud and corruption, and you will arrive at the answer, which is our country. According to recent research done by Intellidex, commissioned by Business Unity South Africa, a social partner at NEDLAC, public sector wage increases as a percentage of tax revenues exceeds 50% of the revenues this year. It also showed that the country's public service is not large in per capita terms, but that public servants are unusually well remunerated, which brings me back to the problem of overzealous trade unions and the ANC's failure to stand up to their alliance partners for the greater good of the entire country. So they must not come here and talk about matters of principle. We need a reasonably large public service due to the socio-economic issues we are facing. But that means we need doctors, nurses, social workers, police officers and teachers, not directors for directors, deputy directors for deputy directors and PAs for their PAs. Ironically, those sectors in which essential public servants are most needed are those who are most understaffed, while the public service remains top-heavy, with higher than the norm salaries for middle, upper and top management. Take the SABC, for example. Staff are devastated after receiving so-called redundancy letters. People with families who will probably be without jobs by the end of the year because the SABC, like every other state-owned entity, could not manage their affairs, including their salary bill, which is 45% of their total budget. But of this 45% salary bill, more than 40 million rand goes to top management. But the journalists, technical staff and support staff who must now carry the brunt of the burden are those who received the letters. So therein lies the answer, Honourable Chair. Trim the fat by trimming excessive management positions and salaries, not those who are essential to our country's safety, security, education, health and well-being. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honourable Dana. Our next speaker will be Honourable Swartz from ACDP.
Thank you, House Chair. House Chair, the ACDP welcomes this topic for discussion from Mr. Madisha, there's undeniably an urgent need to develop a professional and capable state to help the country recover from the social and economic ravages of both the recession and COVID-19 hard lockdown. The medium-term framework highlights the dire state of public finances, and urgent steps are necessary to reduce the budget deficit and stabilize the national debt to GDP ratio. Years of state capture and corruption have resulted in an economic recession which was before the onset of COVID-19. COVID-19 just made a bad situation much worse. The private sector has borne the brunt of the economic devastation of the hard lockdown, with thousands of businesses closing and more than 2 million jobs having been lost. Most employees, or many employees, have also taken a reduction in salaries just to remain employed. Yet the public sector, after years of above inflation salary hikes, remains largely unaffected. It must be said, however, that public sector workers such as doctors, lawyers, laboratory assistants, policemen have been at the forefront of the fight against COVID-19. Public sector employees also rightfully ask why they should have to suffer because of years of state capture and corruption that has taken hundreds of billions of rands from the state coffers. This is indeed a compelling argument. However, the country is in a desperate situation with a sovereign debt crisis looming. This must be averted as it will result in severe austerity conditions should the country have to obtain an IMF assistance. Returning public finances to a sustainable position is thus a non-negotiable. The proposal in the medium-term framework is that the public sector wage bill must be reduced by 36.5 billion as part of sweeping adjustments to save government spending of 300 billion over the medium term. This will take the form of salary freezes. If economic recovery is something that should rather be emphasized, and in this regard, the ACDP supports a shift in spending from consumption spending to investment, to infrastructure development. However, frontline services such as education, health, peace and security should not be affected. The ACDP thus supports developing a comprehensive public sector remuneration strategy for the medium to long term. This includes public office bearers like ourselves, Chairperson, public entities, SOEs, and local government. Competing interests must be balanced on the basis of fairness, equity, and affordability, with best possible persons being appointed to positions on merit. Chairperson, desperate situations, sadly not of our own making, require desperate measures. We all need to make sacrifices, or we will all sink or swim together. I thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Swartz. Our next speaker will be Honorable X.S. Kaiso of the ANC.
Thank you very much, Honorable Chairperson. The ANC's approach to this debate is to find alternatives as a way of finding a solution to our challenges. Unlike what Honorable Strawer was listing a number of grievances to the ANC about its deployees, and that's not what we are going to assist him with. As opposed to a single narrative, what has brought this debate into focus is the key question of managing the challenges of public sector debt and providing evidence-based solution to the challenges thereof. The debate on the public service wage bill too often gets erroneously conflated with the public service. Public sector includes the public service, but also the local government, state-owned enterprise, and other state institutions. That therefore must be disaggregated and not lumped together as if they are one and the same thing. The manner in which debt is managed differs across the public sector, and today the subject of this debate is about the public service. So let us do an analysis of the public sector debt and the public service wage bill in relation to overall budget. This is important as there is no single instrument in dealing with debt as some would want us to believe. Research by Hassan and Altman, two leading labor market analysts, show that public service constitutes 73.4% of total employment of the public sector. And then Stats South Africa quarterly employment statistics for March 2020 shows there were over 1.5 million people employed in the public service at the end of December 2019. Almost 350 people employed in local government, just on 101,000 employed in extra budgetary institutions, and over 111 employed in the universities. Therefore, in total, in the public sector, there are just over 2.1 million employed. The debate on the public service wage bill is not a new one. During the economic policy period of growth, employment, and redistribution strategy of 1996, which committed the government to a program of austerity, it became evident that South Africa had a debt to GDP ratio of only 49.5% in 1996, of which 96.1% of the debt was owed to domestic financial institutions. The country also had an inflation rate of 7.3%. The government would later say that GER had achieved macroeconomic stability, but many analysts insisted that there was no macroeconomic instability in the first place. Honorable Chairperson, what became established out of this debate at this time was that a narrow definition of concept of managing debt, which focuses only on the budget deficit and the inflation rate, has serious shortcomings. South Africa clearly had the fiscal space to embark on the Keynesian growth path that had been proposed by the RDP. Even Business Day wrote in 1993 that a framework that tackles the issue of affordability head on and concludes that an annual rise in government spending of 3.75% is sustainable, provided there is economic growth and real interest rates are reduced to 2%. Within this scenario, the debt to GDP ratio never reaches 60%. We are not in a new debate, Honorable Chair. This debate goes back to the era of transition towards democracy. What is important is that we learn the lessons. Over the past 26 years, there has been talk about the need to reduce the public sector wage bill. So let us look at the facts using National Treasury stats. During 1996-97 fiscal year, the public service sector wage bill was 40.8% of consolidated expenditure. And that was reported by Treasury in 2000. The ratio fell to a low of 32.9% during the 2008-9 fiscal year as the economy grew faster than the growth of the public sector wage bill from 2004. Further, the public sector wage bill was 34.1% of consolidated expenditure during the 2019-20 financial year, as a wage growth was marginally higher than the growth of the economy after 2009. As a percentage of GDP, the public sector wage bill was 12.1% during the 1996-97 fiscal year. During the 2019-2020 financial year, the percentage was 12.2% according to National Treasury's 2020 budget review publication. So, Honorable Chair, clearly, if we go by evidence-based research, a different picture emerges and raises the question, did the sponsor of this debate understand what they were raising when they asked the speaker for this debate? One of the biggest cost drivers for the public service is goods and services. Here I'm talking about service delivery costs that our opponents raise, but procurement costs. The procurement of goods and services has massively increased the cost of government of massively overinflated prices. This requires our dedicated oversight as a parliament as part of our commitment to reduce unnecessary costs to government. Our oversight work across department and state-owned enterprise and other state institutions must bring this to an end. We welcome centralization of the tender process to drive costs down. As we declared at our 54th National Conference of the ANC, we must pursue a supportive macroeconomic framework in which fiscal monetary policy are mutually reinforcing. In conclusion, Honorable Chair, a practical solution to the current impasse is to go back to what was proposed in 1997, that the government do away with the costly monthly top-up of the government employees' pension fund, which on an annual basis at 2020 level cost the 37 billion rand. Thank you very much, Honorable Chair.
Thank you very much. We will now call upon Honorable Sheikh Imam.
Thank you, House Chair. I'm just been moonlighting. But let me start off, House Chair, I've got a different approach to this, the issue of public sector wage bill. And whilst I must admit that it is extremely high and remains an excruciating concern for the public purse, it is arguable that the salaries are high. There's no doubt about that. What is a concern for me is that the value for money we get from what we pay in terms of compensation to employees. And when I say that, I'm talking about right from the ground, whether you're talking about officials, whether you're talking about councillors, MPLs, MPs, the entire sector. Are we really getting value for money? If you speak to Belinda Botwell, she'll tell you what a difficult time she's had at the Home Affairs from this morning. That our officials will not even be prepared to go and greet her and listen to her problems. That is how poor the service is from public servants at the moment. That is the difficulty we seem to be having. I give you an example of South African Airways. If you speak to the Minister of Finance, he will tell you that at any given time, 1 in 3 of our employees were off sick at any given time. Now that is where we have a problem. So I think whilst the public sector wage bill is quite high, what we're not getting is the value for money. So what we need to do is a more effective governance system to make sure people do more with less. And that's what we are not having in South Africa at the moment. And why do we have that situation? Because we tend to employ people not based on their capacity, their ability, their qualifications, but because we like them, because they are friends, and we're seeing it in the state-owned entities, in all the institutions. We're not getting this in the private sector. Why? Why is the private sector able to control their employees to a much larger extent than we could in the public sector? And yet, in the public sector, people need to understand that, let's be honest, we're talking about 630 billion rand of your money. And that is going just to pay compensation to employees. And we are far in excess of the norm of most countries throughout the world in terms of their GDP, in terms of what we spend, but we're not getting anything in return. And I'm not going to say, the question is, should we be making everybody pay the price because some of people are not performing, because of the ineffectiveness, because of looting, because of corruption, because of the poor procurement processes? No. I think what we need to do is have a holistic approach to this. The bill is high, but we need a more effective government. If we can deliver services more effectively, I think we're getting more value for money. We won't have a problem even with that current wage bill. I think my time is up. Thank you very much for that.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sheikh Imam. The next speaker will be Honorable Clark from the Democratic Alliance.
Thank you, Chairperson. South Africa spends around 1/3 of its budget on the salaries of civil servants, including national and provincial officials, doctors, teachers, and police. In the fiscal year starting from April, government projects it will spend around 639 billion on its wage bill. Government's wage bill has tripled between 2007 and 2019. Wage deals between powerful unions which are allied with the ANC have not resulted in quality service delivery for our citizens. The ANC government only cares about enriching themselves and rewarding those close to them with employment. Government has become an employment agency for cadres, often lacking skills needed for the said positions. The sad reality is that South Africans bear the brunt of this as they receive diminished levels of service delivery as a consequence to this. Government should not be responsible for creating jobs, but rather it should create an enabling environment that crowds in private investment and stimulates economic growth. For far too long, as cadres employed as public servants used the mechanisms of the state to their own advantage in doing business with the state and enriching themselves. While there are current mechanisms in place to prevent this problem, these have proven to be ineffective, and there seems to be no political will on the part of the minister and his department to stop this practice by government officials. The DA recently revealed that 1,544 public servants have been caught conducting business with the state, and while Minister Mchunu has repeatedly made commitments to hold these officials to account, we are still waiting for the SAPS report regarding these illegal practices to serve before our committee. It's time to take some bold steps. Reduce the cabinet to 15 ministries and amalgamate departments where functions have been duplicated. The Minister of Finance has touted that the ANC has reduced the size of cabinet, but this is not true, as the creation of more deputy ministerial posts has nullified any attempt to reduce its size in the first place. Big business has called on government to cut its wage bill. The current public wage bill is unsustainable and detrimental to the economy of our country. Treasury seeks nearly 311 billion in wage bill reductions by 2023-24. It has chosen not to implement any salary increases. Will the ANC be able to deliver on these promised cuts? As the ANC needs its union allies to help mobilize support at the local government election next year, will we see these bold steps being taken by the ANC? The reduction of the wage bill will contribute to the cutting of non-interest spending and could save the fiscus around 300 billion rand. This must be done in a fair and just manner. We need action now. Instead of millionaire managers sitting in offices, we need to reprioritize funding to posts like police, doctors, teachers, nurses, and all frontline employees that provide critical services to the citizens of this country. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Clerk. The next speaker will be Honorable Lesoma from the ANC.
Thank you, Honorable House Chair. Good afternoon, honorable members, fellow South Africans, workers, unionized and none who works and make this country tick. I'm looking forward for the day whereby the DA will be calling for insourcing. It is interesting that we have been brought to this debate by a former president of SATU, the largest teachers union in South Africa, and a former president of COSATU, the giant federation of organized working class in our country. Indeed, the teacher and the public servant in Mr. Madisha must have invoked something deep inside him to ask Parliament to discuss the public sector wage bill and the future public sector remuneration strategy. Indeed, Honorable House Chair, as the ANC, we have entered the debate neither as arrogant ruling party that knows it all, nor as a tiny opposition party seeking attention. As some parties have done during this sitting, we enter the debate, Honorable, humbly so, as the leader of the government and the society. We welcome inputs and views by all the patriotic political parties and civil society formations that seek to build a better country for our children and our grandchildren. Honorable House Chair, in this debate, I will intend to lay the facts on the table, not the means that some neoliberal parties like the DA, Freedom Front Plus usually peddle. We are going to put forward evidence-based, as my colleagues earlier on have articulated, which will address the challenges of wastage in the public service and end off the some ideas about the restructuring the public service and public sector, as it were. Basic principles, Honorable House Chair and fellow honorable members. First and foremost, South Africa is a democratic, constitutional and unitary state that is based on the rule of law. Therefore, there is an expectation that government always strives to act within the confines of law, and it is committed to that. Fundamental to this is the expenditure of the state funds in line with the constitutional provisions, as well as the imperative to achieve progressive social economic transformation. It is in this context that the management of the wage bill must be discussed in this House. Owing to the fact that democratic government exists to provide services to the people, it is critical that needs of the citizens are met and recognition that those who work in the public sector serve at the behest of the citizens. However, Honorable House Chair, this does not mean that public servants should not be compensated fairly for their work. Let us not forget that the public servants have risked their lives in the fight against the COVID-19 pandemic to ensure that all of us are safe and those who fell sick are healed and recovered, as earlier on my colleagues have alluded to. There is a need, Honorable House Chair, to ensure that the fiscal framework adopted by Parliament does not compromise government's ability to provide the requisite services to the people. Government must also guarantee the compensation of hard-working public officials, while at the same time protecting resources for service delivery. The policy of the ANC, Honorable House Chair and fellow honorable members, which is opposed by the neoliberal wing of the opposition, is to build a strong, ethical, agile, and developmental state. This form of state is the best place to feed the millions of our people out of abject poverty and unemployment. The ANC government prefers to negotiate in order. This is our motto and our commitment, in order to find solutions to the challenges in the public service. Only the DA-led Western Cape government believes that the only option is to retrench the workers. The economic and financial hardships brought about the COVID-19 pandemic require everyone work for national unity and for government to work together with social partners to save the jobs. Guided by the Economic Reconstruction and Recovery Plan, that plan was the outcome of the social compact reached at NECLEC. As lawmakers, we must also work together to solve the challenge of sustainable compensation of public servants. If we fail, we will be judged harshly by the history. Character of public service that South Africa needs. As the ANC, we welcome the South African population is growing, and now it is at about 58 million. This means that government has to build requisite capacity to meet the complex, ever-changing needs of population. It must attract and retain a competent cadre of public servants to meet the needs of the future. This, therefore, Honorable House Chair, requires the modernization of the state by embracing new technological advancements and introduce measures to improve public sector efficiency. In dealing with the wage bill, government must ensure a return on investment by maximizing the value for money spent on remuneration in all organs of state, while enforcing productivity measures to meet citizens' satisfaction. Government must deal with the corruption and other acts of impropriety in order to earn the trust of the citizens. The ANC welcomes Cabinet's decision in the regard, which includes the proposal to amend the Public Service Administration Management Act of 2014 and the Public Service Act of 1994. These proposals, Honorable House Chair, include moving towards a single public service and retention of National School of Government as a national department. They also give effect to the reforms envisaged in the NDP of professionalizing the public service. Addressing wastage in the public service, Honorable House Chair, we must acknowledge that there is a lot of wastage in the public sector. There are also areas where the labor of of public servants is not utilized optimally. In order to enhance performance, government must ensure that there is a greater accountability by managers, and they must manage. The recent suspensions, dismissals, and arrests of a number of senior managers for failure to fulfill their professional obligation at ESCOM, for an example, UIF, NPA, SAPS, and SAFIS, and among others, are evidence that government is moving to acting decisively to stem the tide of power performance in the state institutions. I'm not too sure where does the DA lives if it's not South Africa that we are in today. Outsourcing through the procurement in government tends to be more concerned with complying with a myriad of rules of procedures than with maximizing value for money. Full compliance with the rules and procedures and thus achieving clean audits has become the ultimate goal, while paying 4 times for a bottle of water hardly attracts any attention. Who benefits? The private sector. In this report, in our report on COVID-19 related expenditure by our late AG, may his soul rest in peace, raised a concern about the lack of intelligence, information systems able to collate, compare information in real time, and lack of rigorous controls as key weaknesses in the public sector system. Moreover, Honorable House Chair and fellow South Africans, the sheer size of some departments sometimes make controls that work elsewhere ineffective. Minimizing waste, therefore, means thinking beyond prescribing more controls and more audit. Instead, it would require new out-of-the-box thinking on how to devise incentives for the efficient management of public resources. Restructuring the public service sector, Honorable Chair, the President is in his strategic center is the strategic center of government. In this regard, it must be the central driver of the developmental state and the state micro policy and planning, comparative governance, public service, and performance management, as it were. Cooperative governance legislation must be enacted to deal with the issues relating to efficiency of provincial and national government support to local government and provinces. The Presidential Commission to review the powers, functions, and number of provinces must be urgently established. The DPSA, together with COCTA, should analyze the mandate overlaps and recommend consolidating of reconfiguration functional mandates and roles between entities and departments to inform the appropriate configuration. Dealing with the facts and evidence, Honorable House Chair, we would assist based on policy, which would be based on policy, is about reducing the time to develop and implement policy so that it is not a knee-jerk reaction to the policy, but a scientific and imperial approach to social change. On a humanitarian and solidarity as a caring government and as an organization, which is the ANC, our glorious movement, the social and economic crisis generated by the COVID-19 pandemic has accelerated South Africa's fiscal crisis. But the origins of the fiscal crisis are deeper than the COVID-19. Public expenditure was expanded to deliver on social justice in the post-apartheid era. The expansion of public sector commitments was deliberate, warranted, and well-targeted. It included a permanent expansion of core public services like basic education, health, and policy. For an example, a permanent expansion of core public services, basic education, health, and policy, an increase in pro-poor fiscal transfers, significant real improvements in the remuneration of public employees, a surge in public infrastructure investment. In closing, Honorable House Chair, forecasts may tell you a great deal about the forecaster. They tell you nothing about the future. Importantly, not everything that counts can be counted, and not everything that can be counted counts. It is equally important to analyze the past, and you have to design the future so that you are able to design the future. Thus, the ANC government would not allow the day to run us. We are combat ready to run the day. Thus, planning, working to achieve our objectives with the resource we have, operating, monitoring in safeguarding the fiscal resources, evaluating and transparency through reporting the actual in changing our general people's lives in South Africa. I thank you, Honorable House Chair and Honorable members. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Honorable Lesoma. The last speaker on this subject will be Honorable Madisha.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you, Chairperson.
Proceed, Honorable Madisha.
Thanks, and all the members. I thank all the honorable members because without doubt, we all agree that public service delivery must not be allowed to play the second fiddle. It is very important. What we must agree further is to pay the people, stick to agreement signed. I feel it's a bit bad, but I understand the last person who spoke, the honorable member, you know, with written speeches. It becomes unfortunate because you just stick to that, even if other members see it otherwise. But I don't blame the poor member. I know where we come from. She knows where we come from. Yes, government has not done well to address many management challenges our country and people face. Yes, the working class, the downtrodden, the poor suffer the most, whilst those in managerial positions enjoy more. Hence, their realm of corruption cannot be measured. That is a major problem. Let us once again check the SOE. I said we must reduce and merge some of them. Take an example of the SABC, where the CEO and other people in the managerial position get more than, millions of rents every year. And yet you look at those people who run around with cameras and they get about 10,000 rand or more. And those are the people who are told that they must be kicked out. And these are people who, as I say, are part and parcel of
Honorable Madisha, as you wrap up, your time is up.
Okay, let me then end, Chair, by saying that South Africa has less than 60 million people, and we have a rally of ministers, and countries such as China with 1.3 billion people.
Thank you very much, Honorable Madisha. I gave you a minute.
Okay,
thank you very much.
All right.
Honorable members, that concludes the debate on this subject.
Thank you very much, young lion.
We
did very well.
We shall now proceed to the first order of the day, which is the consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs on petition pertaining to lack of service delivery in Ward 52 under the City of Ethekwini. I now recognize Honorable D.R. Direko from the virtual platform.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, the ANC reaffirms its commitment to put local government in people's hands, and it remains guided by the Freedom Charter, which contains a declaration that says, I quote, people shall govern, out of quote. A central feature of our democratic system is that government representatives and officials who should remain in touch with the people and be able to engage the communities that they serve. The ANC notes the petition of Ward 35 residents and appeals to the Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality to strengthen communication lines with the communities in order to reinforce service delivery. Chairperson, together with the communities, the ANC will build on achievement made in delivering basic services to the people, improve access to the municipal services, and reduce outsourcing in the municipalities. The ANC calls on all stakeholders in Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality to reduce their effort in order to redouble their effort in order to intensify the fight against social fabric crimes in the communities, fraud and corruption in the local government. The Ethekwini Metropolitan municipalities should ensure that local communities are involved in all developmental initiatives in their respective localities. One of the 7 priorities of the ANC-led government is building a capable developmental state, a state that responds to the needs of its people, a state that values innovation, human capital, and merit. It is also a state that emphasizes on economic performance, education, safety, healthcare, and infrastructure. The Constitution of our Republic of South Africa mandates all of us to build local government that has a capacity to afford democratic and accountable government for the local communities. Accountable government should be able to communicate with the communities, and in this regard, public participation should play a key role. However, we as the ANC are aware of the challenges that our communities are facing regarding public participation, and we are working on that by strengthening our oversight mechanism together with consequence management strategy. It is in this regard that the ANC reaffirmed its commitment in strengthening cooperative governance and integrated planning, implementation, reporting, monitoring, and evaluation. A game changer program, which is called District Development Model, was introduced in 2019. The model builds on the white paper on local government in 1998, which seeks to ensure that local government is highly capacitated and transformed to play a developmental role. The ANC appreciates the fact that Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality is currently one of the 4 districts where the model has been launched. There is no doubt that Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality and the stakeholders are equal to the task of further implementing the district development models in other local areas. The ANC recommits itself in building developmental local government, committed to working with citizens and groups within the communities to find sustainable ways to meet their social, economic, and material needs, and also to improve the quality of their lives. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Direko. The next speaker will be Honorable Hussein. Before you come, Honorable Hussein, I will now hand over to Honorable Lesoma to proceed with the debate. Thank you very much. Honorable Hussein.
I am awaiting your, may I proceed, Chair?
Please do.
Chairperson, thank you very much. In June this year, the residents of Brooks Farm in Ward 52 Ethekwini filed a petition with the Speaker. That petition contained more than a dozen complaints relating to failed service delivery in the ward, as well as their residents' unhappiness with the ANC ward councillor, who appears to favor only residents who are members of his own political party. The complaints ranged from continuous problems with water and sanitation, lack of suitable housing facilities, the unfair distribution of food parcels on a party political basis instead of adopting a needs-based approach, improper health facilities, and a general state of poor service delivery in the ward. In October this year, the COCTA Portfolio Committee, during its oversight visit to KZN, sought to engage the community of Brooks Farm to listen to their grievances and use the opportunity to secure the intervention of the Ethekwini municipal leadership and to address their concerns. The municipality was requested to facilitate the meeting and arrange for the Portfolio Committee to meet with those community members who signed to that petition. Unfortunately, Chairperson, when the day arrived, the planned engagement with the residents of Brooks Farm was hijacked by the local ward councillor. And instead of holding a community meeting to listen to the residents' grievances, the Portfolio Committee was led to a different venue in Bambai Township, which was organized by the local ward councillor. This, unfortunately, turned out to be nothing more than a party political rally. To the credit of the COCTA chairperson, Honorable Mutambi, and the rest of the Portfolio Committee members who were present on the day, we all expressed our grave dissatisfaction for what had occurred, and it became glaringly obvious that the Ethekwini mayor and his team were well aware that the meeting was being hijacked, and they sought to convince us otherwise. This incident, unfortunately, reflects the very immature leadership that exists in this municipality, where a meeting of this House of Parliament was hijacked for party political purposes. Chairperson, the DA wishes to place on record our deep dissatisfaction with the manner in which this matter was handled and extend our appreciation to the committee and members of the Portfolio Committee for speaking out against this childish behavior from the eThekwini municipality. Let me turn now to the substantive issues and the complaints raised by the residents of Brooks Farm in Ward 52. We wish to place on record, Chairperson, that these complaints are not isolated only to Ward 52 in eThekwini. There are serious governance problems in this municipality that require urgent and immediate attention. Even the KZN Treasury has flagged this municipality as one that is in distress. This week, for the second time, the city manager was arrested by the Hawks. His arrests relate to the failure his failure to comply with his bail conditions, and when he was arrested together with the former mayor Zandile Gumede for tender fraud and corruption. The other 52 councillors who are also fingered for possible fraud and corruption in the municipality continue to occupy their seats at taxpayers' expense, and there appears to be no political will whatsoever from the ANC leadership there to take any action against them. The city's infrastructure is also collapsing. Not a single day passes where you wouldn't find burst water pipes spewing out millions of liters of water on the street. Sewer pipes also overflow into the rivers because it can no longer handle the volumes that they were originally planned for. The city requires billions of rands of emergency top-up expenditure to renew its failing infrastructure because it failed to plan properly years ago when it was necessary to do so. Corruption and fraud have become endemic in this municipality, a situation that has not changed for decades now. And while the politicians and officials are colluding with each other to rape the public purse, the very residents who put these crooks into power are the ones who are suffering the most. Honorable Chairperson, on behalf of the Democratic Alliance, we are making an earnest and urgent appeal to the political leadership of KwaZulu-Natal province to take urgent measures to arrest the failing situation in eThekwini. Although there are some good areas and some good progresses that have been noticed, the deep-seated corruption and governance failures in this municipality is causing untold hardship for the poorest communities who are desperate for simple basic service delivery. It doesn't come as a surprise, therefore, Chairperson, why the meeting was hijacked initially, because there was a genuine attempt by some to prevent the Portfolio Committee from hearing the real state of affairs on the ground. Unless there is urgent intervention and constant monitoring of this municipality, the residents of Brooks Farm, together with the residents of other townships across the city, will never see the promised better life for all. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Hussein. My apologies there. Honorable Lesuma has joined plenary one. I will be proceeding with the proceedings here. Our next speaker will be Honorable Mkalipi from the EFF.
Thank you very much, Chairperson. The people of Ward 52 in Brooks Farm VD and Comprehensive VD submitted a petition to Parliament to seek help as their last resort because they don't have a ward councillor. Ward councillors Tembiso Boxer Zulu have relocated from this ward more than 2 years now. Brooks Farm community and Comprehensive VD community have written to the mayor on many occasions, and all correspondence have not been responded to until they opt to approach Parliament. Portfolio Committee on COCTA on their oversight in KwaZulu-Natal arranged to go and meet with Brooks Farm community and Comprehensive VD community to listen to them. But the ward councillor colluded with the municipal officials, including the mayor of eThekwini, to take the meeting in the wrong place to avoid and to stop people of Brooks Farm to talk to the portfolio committees about their issues that they are faced on a daily basis. The chairperson of COCTA, Honorable Ndambi, raised a concern about this act, which misled the portfolio committee and ended up attending a political meeting which didn't serve the purpose of the meeting with petitioners. The issue of Brooks Farm, which is about housing project, remains unresolved, as it is the intention of the ward councillor Tembiso Boxer Zulu, who is no longer having interest of serving the people of this area. And Chairperson, you are talking about the poorest of the people who does not know where to go when they are faced with this situation. And people of Brooks Farm, they need intervention in order to benefit from a rectification project of which they are told that because when they were giving these houses 15 years ago, they managed to go and assess loans to extend their houses. But now, with this new rectification project, they are told that there is no place to extend their houses. As a result, they don't know where to go until they wrote to Parliament. I urge Parliament to intervene on the Brooks Farm community who have nowhere to go since their ward councillor have deserted them. No member of a community must feel neglected because they are part and parcel of the government. Therefore, thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mkalipi. The next speaker will be Honorable Tebekulu from the IFP.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson, honorable members. Providing a sufficient and satisfactory service delivery is constituent mandate of municipalities. As custodians of the Constitution, municipalities are tasked with ensuring that people have at least basic services they need. Fraud and corruption are the greatest hindrance to sufficient service delivery, which is why adequate transparency and accountability are imperative in the conduct of municipal operations. To know that service delivery in municipalities is profusely insufficient is disheartening because this has a direct and immediate effect on communities' quality of life. First and foremost, it is utterly disgraceful that the City of Ethekwini is hiding behind the COVID-19 outbreak for failing to deliver housing to communities. The city reported that it had submitted stage 1 application to the KwaZulu-Natal government of human settlement in March 2020, and the process was delayed by the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic. This justification is shamefully and has no basis as the issue of housing has been ongoing since 2017, meaning it took the city 3 years to submit a stage 1 application. Furthermore, last year, following a community protest in September, the municipality said that the municipality said that the delivery of housing is top priority, yet submitting stage 1 application only happened at the end of March in the following year. In terms of national policy provisions, municipalities have the duty to undertake housing projects, and the municipalities' failure to deliver on this matter has very little to do with COVID-19. The excuse is unacceptable and reflects the municipality's ability to take a truthful accountability. Honorable members, it should also be noted that the municipality failed to make a clear and detailed presentation regarding the issue of an electricity contractor who attended only to 20 houses despite being issued a 40 million rand tender. It is profusely unacceptable that the municipality did not disclose the relevant details at all. Beyond that, failing to account on an issue that involves such an exorbitant amount of state funds is suspicious and reflects brazen corruption.
Honorable Tebekulu, your time has expired.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much, Honorable Ngwezi. Please behave. The next speaker will be Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam, are you there? I will take it that Honorable Sheikh Imam is not in the platform. Can I then move to Honorable Tou of the ANC?
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The African National Congress in Ethekwini Metropolitan emerged victorious in the 2016 local government election. Arising from this triumph, the ANC main goal is for everyone to have decent housing with services such as running water, sanitation, rubbish removal, and electricity. It is in this regard that the ANC urges all the stakeholders in the Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality to work together to find ways to provide housing. This includes the state, the private sector, organizations, women, children, and community. The houses built should take people's needs into account. However, the ANC appreciates the response of the Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality, which indicates it had submitted Stage 1 application to the KwaZulu-Natal Department of Women's Settlement in March 2020. It further states the department was now assessing the application following the easing of the lockdown. The municipality will commence with advertising tender services, and we appeal to the municipality to follow the due process in this regard. The Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality should ensure it brings government closer to the people with the objective of fast-tracking delivery of quality basic services to the people. It should improve financial management of the municipality by employing capable and qualified staff. We therefore appeal to the Department of Cooperative Governance and Traditional Affairs, COGTA, as the main stakeholder to ensure that all municipalities perform their basic responsibilities and functions consistently by putting people and their concern first, promoting good governance, transparency, and accountability, ensuring sound financial management and accounting. In conclusion, Chairperson, the ANC urges the Ethekwini Metropolitan Municipality to continue building on the achievement of the ANC-led government post-1994 democratic elections. The ANC has made giant strides in terms of providing services such as houses, water and sanitation, electricity, roads that link our communities. I thank you, Honorable Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. That concludes the debate on this report. We shall now proceed to the last order of the day, which is the consideration of the report of Portfolio Committee on Transport. Can you please mute your mic? Can you please mute your mic?
I was thinking.
Honorable Tro, can you mute your mic, please?
Yes, Chairperson.
Mute your mic. We shall now proceed to the last order of the day, which is consideration of the report of the Portfolio Committee on Transport on Oversight visit to assess state of readiness of various modes of transport and their attendant facilities in line with implementation of Level 3 regulations of COVID-19 lockdown. I now recognize the Honorable Zwane from the virtual platform.
Thanks, Chair. Good afternoon to the honorable members. The aim of our oversight visit in Bloemfontein was twofold, Chair. The first one was Mangaung Testing Center, and of course the second one was the Integrated Public Transport Network. During our visit to the Lingau Testing Center, the committee was welcomed by 4 junior officials and a representative from SALGA. The committee then visited the following areas: the service station, where we found long queues amongst other challenges. And we're told that these long queues were caused by the COVID-19 and the lack of disinfection services. The second area we visited as a committee was the eye testing area. And there we found that out of 8 eye testing machines, 2 were not working. We then went to the license testing classroom, where there were 20 computers, because we're told that this is a new model where learners are tested through computerized methods. Out of the 20 computers which were there, only 7 computers were working. We then moved to the debt management system, and we found that out of 10 officials working there, only 7 were present at work. The committee was supposed to engage the following day with senior officials which were not present the first day on Friday to get some clarity where junior officials could not provide. And to the committee's dismay, the senior officials could not turn up for the meeting. As a result, that engagement was cancelled, and the committee resolved to make a follow-up to get clarity on the issues that were left hanging and just find out why would the senior officials be found wanting when it comes to them doing their work. On the IPTN chair, the committee was taken to 2 sites, the first being the depot construction site, and the second one being the municipality building where 10 buses were kept. On the depot construction, the committee realized that the depot was still in its infant stages of phase 1, although we're told that this phase 1 will be completed in March next year. Looking at the development progress, the committee was not convinced that this was likely to be the case. The committee then expressed concerns on the 10 buses which were still standing a year after they were purchased, and requested a detailed report breaking down the features that led the buses to cost 5.5 million rand per bus. And that report will have to follow. The committee was not able to get clarity on the issue pertaining the department because the official who was supposed to be part of the meeting did not turn up and no reasons were given. Why? The committee expressed the need.
Duane, your time
Chair.
has expired.
Okay, Chair. Although there is some progress, the committee is of the view that there is
Honorable
still
Duane.
a lot to be done. Thank you. Thank you, Chair.
Very much. Thank you very much. The next speaker will be Honorable Hansinger from the DA.
Thank you, House Chair. The DA supports this report and allow me to acknowledge truckers as one of the unsung heroes during all stages of lockdown. Truckers were and still are at the forefront of distribution and moving goods and articles around the country. It will not be forgotten that truckers were denied a decent meal over thousands of kilometers. Furthermore, they were open targets and still receive little regard and even less protection. Indeed, they kept the country going in so many ways, and for that, the DA salutes you. At various stages and places, the Portfolio Committee visited ranks, stations, and terminals to check on public taxis, buses, aeroplanes, and trains. And a lot was done in effort to cope and mitigate with COVID-19. Taxis were working at full capacity, buses displayed more caution, aeroplanes were grounded, and railways stood still. At Langa and Philippi, PRASA has allowed rail track sections to be invaded by more than 600 families who to this day prevent millions of people from getting on a train to places like Mitchell's Plain and Khayelitsha. Through this, millions of rand have shifted from rail to road, contrary to what Minister Mbalula's ideas were during question time on the 11th of November. During the debate on the 3rd of November, we shared many sad stories about vandalized rail service, but nothing will ever adequately express the scenes and feeling while visiting various stations and rail sites during level 3 in May and June. Not COVID, but bad human decision was the cause of this. Not paying security guards, not renewing security contracts, not calling on SAPS and military guard are all human decisions not undertaken by PRASA and this ANC government. Bad decisions which also include the hasty decision to fire the PRASA board, the no-fix idea of a Toy Story war room, and the fantasy appointment of an administrator. Decisions which brought back less than 200 out of 2,228 kilometers of functioning rail track. During level 3 stage, thousands of repatriates could return, thanks to Team Home Away from Home managed by my colleague Darren Bergman in cooperation with DIRCO. Linked to this, an extensive road transport and logistics operation assisted repats to get to their home provinces after quarantine. And I want to thank the Department of Transport for their support and help in this regard. 3 categories of vehicle-related registrations validity were extended. Trade plates to the 31st of November, driving licenses and PDPs until the 31st of January next year, except vehicle registrations. Here the cutoff was mid-September, while many traffic officers were and still are undercapacitated with vehicle owners that struggle to comply, even online. Volumes are currently heaped up with both human and procedural capacity not coping. We therefore again request that the validity in all categories of vehicle, trade and person-related registrations should be extended to the end of this financial year in 2021. Related to this, and despite their and our efforts, the plight of our tourism-related minibus and bus sector operators and coach liner service providers are not heard. Many of these fleets haven't moved since March. They are struggling. Please consider waiving the permit registration and license fees. It makes no sense that aeroplanes are filled to capacity for a multi-hour flight while buses are still restricted to 70% capacity rates. Bus owners are struggling, and by waiving their registration and permit fees, we can help them to survive. Lastly, I want to thank all staff, officials and owners in public and private transport sectors for your efforts to make things safe for us. Your commitment and dedication to serve civic transport needs during all levels of lockdown is noted and highly appreciated. Ndiyabulela ngexesha enindiphe lona. I thank you. Ek dankie.
Thank you very much, Honorable Hansinger. I'm informed that the next speaker will be Honorable Paulson of the EFF.
Thank you, Chairperson. Chairperson, we went on oversight at various taxi ranks, bus termini, railway stations and airports to, among others, assess the state of readiness, operations and compliance at transport facilities in the midst of level 3 of the COVID-19 lockdown, to assess whether the information supplied by the Department of Transport on their assistance to the public transport nodes to prepare for the level 3 operational requirements were indeed accurate, and also to determine whether the enforcement of regulations for operations to continue under level 3 were being implemented. Now, Chairperson, to understand the public transport interchanges and its conditions, we have to first and foremost put it into context. And the context here is that these transport interchanges, or better known as taxi ranks, They are used mostly by African and colored working class commuters. So with that in mind, one can understand why the ANC are reluctant to invest and to spend money on these taxi ranks, because it's only for poor African and colored working class people. So not all of these taxi ranks were supplied with PPEs. In most taxi ranks that we visited, in some there are no functional toilets with running water. Toilets were either broken or leaking. There are no facilities to wash hands. At the Germiston taxi rank, commuters were relieving themselves in the open spaces. The sanitizers that were procured by the taxi industry themselves often ran out without a plan to restock. Facilities were filthy and there were no refuse bins in sight. Small tanks were supplied, but they were never filled with water. Some facilities have not been cleaned since the commencement of the lockdown. At the Nyanga public transport interchange, taxis and buses were overloaded above the regulated 70% loading capacity, and there were no visible law enforcement and a general sense of lawlessness. This overloading was due to the central line not being operational for over a year. The central line in Cape Town used to be the daily commute for more than 400,000 passengers. Fixing the central line should be given the same priority as the South African Airways. There were also many unroadworthy, scrapped and abandoned vehicles parked at these facilities. It's the same with the bus rapid transit system, particularly the Ray Vaya, which the state has invested billions of rands, as well as our rails and ports. The information supplied by the Department of Transport in most instances are not a true reflection of the status quo on the ground. However, Chairperson, I want to pay special attention to the difference between the airports and other nodes of transport that are used by 80% of daily
Honorable
commuters.
Paulsen, your time has expired.
Can't be, Chair. It's 2 minutes.
I'm advised by the table, Honorable Paulsen, I don't make my time, unfortunately. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Chair.
Our next speaker will be Honorable KP Sitole.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson and honorable members. Proper hygiene and sanitation are most important in slowing down the spread of coronavirus. The public transport sector is crowded, making proper hygiene and sanitation nearly impossible. As such, supporting the transport sector is needed. Industry members have reported that they have received very little support from the transport department. Taxi drivers did not receive faces masks, sanitizers were not issued to the taxi rank. Taxi ranks were also filthy and congested. Toilets did not have any hand washing facilities. What was even more alarming was the fact that taxis were filling up with 100% capacity, despite COVID-19 regulations. Overall, the public transport sector was ill prepared for COVID-19. This is a huge issue because it means that the transport department has not fulfilled its duties. The crowded nature of public transport sectors, specifically taxi ranks, make it a hotspot for COVID-19. The fact that social distancing is not maintained is a cause for concern. Special attention needs to be paid to funding and implementing mechanisms that will ensure that COVID-19 regulations are adhered to in the public transport sectors. Ultimately, the transport department ought to step up and fulfill its duties. This industry needs to specific government attention and is not a task for when government feels like they have time. This industry transports millions of our people and such millions of people's lives. Livelihoods and families are at risk. Currently, there is little vision and a lack of regulation that allow for dignity of working class when using this system. Passengers feel our statistics for road fatalities and now will feel more COVID-19 statistics. We need to place value in people that make us of our taxi industry. And to do this, we require a more professional service support by government incentives for transportation. Amarenki abolile lasa sihlamba khona eGauteng wonke amarenki abolile. Angibonga kakhulu mphathohlelo, ngithokoza.
Thank you very much, Honorable Sithole. The next speaker will be Honorable Sheikh Imam. Honorable Sheikh Imam. I will now proceed to Honorable L.E. MacDonald of the ANC.
Thank you, Chairperson. The ANC policy on transport was captured in the RDP. The RDP highlighted the fact apartheid policies made working people reside far away from centers of employment, and that the policy ensured that multiple modes of public transport was required for people to get to work at huge costs and time. The RDP sought to make road infrastructure and rail infrastructure a priority. The program identified that the transport sector was poorly regulated. In the RDP, the ANC sought to reverse apartheid development, which was an international anomaly, by ensuring that public transport was promoted through the progressive development of the infrastructure and through planned regulation of the sector. In the reconstruction, growth and transformation, building a new inclusive economy views the development of social and economic infrastructure as the key to inclusive economic growth and job creation. Developing an efficient transport system is critical to the growth and development of our economy. During the committee oversight in Cape Town Harbour, it was brought to the committee's attention that 97% of container freight is still being transported by road. In line with the ANC resolution to move freight from road to rail, we urge the Minister through his department to speed up the removal of freight from our country's roads. Reversing the legacy of apartheid's transport policy will contribute significantly to the transformation of the country and improving the lives of the historically disadvantaged communities. When we visited the Praza Metro rail stations in the Western Cape at Langa, we found hundreds of families were erecting homes and were living on the railway lines. The committee pleads with the Western Cape DA-led government to release land to these landless people. This would assist in bringing services of the commuter rail to normalization. Much in the transport infrastructure has already been delivered and much more needs to be done, to which the ANC-led government is committed. The COVID-19 pandemic and the consequent lockdown to flatten the curve and ensure that health facilities were ready for the peak of the pandemic has severely affected the transport sector, not only in South Africa, but globally. The negatively affected the public transport system as buses, trains and transport trucks were unable to function. With the lockdown restrictions being slowly lifted, public transport is slowly starting to function within the framework of government's disaster management regulations, which puts people's lives first through social distancing, sanitization and wearing of protective face masks, etc. During our oversight visit to the taxi ranks in Khayelitsha Site C and Nyanga Terminus, the efforts of the department could be seen to make traveling on taxis and buses during the pandemic as safe as possible. These steps taken will lead to the eventual formalization and professionalism of the taxi industry led by the ANC government through its department.
Honorable
The
MacDonald.
ANC supports the report and asks that this House adopts the tabled report. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you very much, Honorable
Chairperson,
MacDonald.
may I raise a point of order?
Yes, Honorable Mkhaliphi.
Please, Chair, check with the staff members there, because our member, Paulson, only spoke for 2 minutes and we have 4 minutes that is allocated to EFF. Please double check, Chair, and then please give us feedback.
I'll definitely do that, Honorable Mkhaliphi, and probably give a ruling in the next plenary session, because this is the conclusion of the debate and the business of this virtual mini-plenary session.
Okay.
And the mini-plenary will now rise. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Chairperson.
Banomsindo.
Nomsindo kwakho.